Today I'm speaking with Yevhen Lyr, author of the novels The God of the Steppes, Stepovy Bog, and The Flood. On June 6, 2023, the Kakhovka Dam in Russian-occupied Ukraine was destroyed, unleashing catastrophic flooding in Kherson and the surrounding regions. It's widely believed to have been a deliberate act of ecocide by Russian forces. The Flood, his novel, was inspired, provoked even, by that event of absolute barbarism and is a literary tapestry woven from real testimonies, documentary journalism, and fictional connectors. It centers on the aftermath of the destruction of the dam, an event that devastated parts of southern Ukraine and submerged Kherson in water and grief. The story follows a newcomer to the city, the clocksmith, who listens to and collects the stories of soldiers, volunteers, survivors, and locals. If you want to find out more, if you want to find out where you can get this book, because it is available in English, do please have a look at the description of the video. And of course, if you want to help Ukraine remain resilient, then please support fundraisers such as the one we're running with Car for Ukraine to get 4x4 vehicles that get converted to be battle ready for the front. And of course, they do save Ukrainian lives every day once they're in use. Yevgen, welcome to the channel.
Hello, nice to see you. I'm really pleased to be here as a guest.
Could you give a little bit of your own background and context for the audience? Because you're not just an author, you're also serving your country. And yeah, please, a little bit of a biography so we have some background.
Sure. So, the south of Ukraine is a really personal place for me because I actually come from Melitopol. Melitopol is under Russian occupation since, I guess, the third or the fourth day the full-scale war erupted. It's a really unfortunate story where Russians basically managed to seize the whole city in a matter of 2 days. Like it was really quick. I wasn't there. I was on vacation with my soon-to-be wife at the time, and actually, this is what saved me from being, occupied in the midst of the occupied city and being captured by Russians, I guess. So everything I do since the full-scale war erupted is connected with trying to get my home back. I know that it may be impossible in terms of conventional war or even unconventional war because the city is really deep into occupied territories right now, and Ukrainian forces tried to run a campaign to deoccupy Melitopol and the region, but unfortunately, it had no success. Yet, still, I enlisted willingly to Ukrainian armed forces. Before that, I volunteered. I tried to raise as many funds as possible for drones, trucks, all kind of stuff. You know better than most people what I'm talking about. So, yeah. Also, I'm a translator, and I was really happy to get an opportunity to work with different layers, different positions of Ukrainian war to make it sound native, maybe for our readers in Europe, in America, in different countries. Just because it happened so that my mother is a linguistics teacher. And so I learned English since I was 4 years old, 5 years old, and this is why The Flood is actually written in English. This is no translation. The original text is written by me in English. And right now I'm working on the Ukrainian translation. Unfortunately, my work is a little bit slow, so now and then I'm getting, some happy letters from my publisher. So, Ukrainer, if you're watching this, I'm sorry, guys. I'm trying my best. But, it's really great to be able to speak the same language, to speak in the same tongue with the audience I'm trying to reach.
Is it more difficult in some ways translating your own work than translating a different author's work?
Oh, yes, it is. But on the other hand, I have a privilege, an absolute privilege to change things I feel that need to be changed. And just because I'm the guy who wrote the book, I can make a little bit more difference in the context of Ukrainians reading the book about Ukraine versus European guys reading the book about Ukraine. A lot of things I try to make more common. I mean, maybe giving more deeper context for European readers are unnecessary for Ukrainian ones. Like everybody knows what is Shahed, everybody knows here about the way we try to avoid being hit by a drone, and this context is really important for the readers who don't who did never experience this themselves.
To what extent? I mean, the book is all about bearing witness to, I'm even loath to call it disaster because, yes, it's a disaster, but it's a man-made disaster. It's an intentional disaster. To what extent is both the book and indeed your efforts all about bearing witness to this truth?
When the whole thing happened, I may even give you a little bit deeper context. Th- it was not the first time Ukrainian media shared news about Kakhovka Dam exploding. So when it really happened, it was like fifth or maybe sixth entry of this topic into Ukrainian media space, and all the previous ones were fake. Like we knew Russians were preparing something. We knew there was a plan to blow up the dam, but all the previous news about the explosion, I mean, like happening, surfacing in, say, April, May, they were fake ones. And when the real news got through, it was at night. To be honest with you, I was skeptical about it. I thought it was just another part of fake news, maybe Russian propaganda to stop our forces from advancing, and then first videos emerged. First witnesses spoke by their phones with their relatives, and then I was like, gosh, this is really happening. This is basically happening right now. And it was a night. I am a late bird and I try to work at night when it's possible because it's quiet, nobody bothers you. And I was just like collecting all the phone numbers of my peer volunteers. And the moment it was appropriate to call them by the phone, like maybe 6 in the morning, 7 in the morning, I called Mykola Paliha. Mykola Paliha is my friend. He is a prominent volunteer from Khmelnytsky. And I called him and I told him that, my friend, the Kakhovka Dam has been blown up. Like, gather all your friends, gather all your peers. We are going to Kherson. And basically, the first 2 days were complete chaos. Nobody knew where to. A lot of people wanted help. A lot of people wanted to deliver some kind of humanitarian aid, maybe to put their hands to work. But the problem was that everything was so badly organized because nobody actually believed that it can happen. There was no plan of actions, no schedule. Those guys go there, this structure goes there. Like everything was arranged on the run. And so we bought a lot of motorboats. We bought a lot of specific equipment rescuers asked for. But the city was complete chaos. There were streets flooded. There were animals asking to be saved. Dogs barking, cats mewing, all of this stuff. And surely enough, a lot of people who needed to be rescued. But Kherson itself, the city itself, was relatively in a So to say, I wouldn't say it was a safe space. Of course, there is no safe place during the whole thing happening, being flooded. But there were volunteers and there were a lot of people ready to help. But when we speak about the other bank of Dnipro River, I mean Oleshki, I mean, Kartashivka, all the villages on the other bank that is controlled by the Russians, nobody was able to save them. Nobody. Russians just shoot every target that was approaching the village. And I managed to speak to survivors of this tragedy on the other bank later on. And people told stories about spending 2 weeks on the roof of their house with limited supplies of water, with close to no food, and with no volunteers to save them, with no, of course, no armed forces to save them, because Russians tried to push the agenda of actually their soldiers bravely rescuing people. Those damned Ukrainians blew up Kakhovka Dam for no reason whatsoever, and now we are rescuing our people. But the problem is that the whole propaganda stuff they used was combined with some staged efforts by the Russians that actually happened, and with stuff Ukrainian volunteers actually recorded. There is a boat my friends and I bought and brought to the rescuers that was actually a part of Russian video, and they said that they are rescuing people, they are rescuing cats and dogs, and that was nowhere near the Russian controlled territory. It was just our video where our guys were trying to rescue people. So, steering and trying to provide some backup, some media, maybe fog to hide what really happened. But like as I said, first during the first days, nobody could even organize their abilities, their powers to be productive, to be in the place they are really needed to be. So we did what we could. We tried our best.
And we'll come on to the reaction of international media. But touching on what you said there, the sort of fake news stories, with these deliberate accounts being propagated by Russian propaganda to try and sow confusion and distrust, or is there elements of misreporting there by local and international media as well?
I think both. I think really both because we all know Russia has their long story of their history of using bots, of using uh, organized accounts in Twitter, in Facebook that push this, like a certain agenda. But also, yes, there were several misrecordings, misjudgments, maybe, and I think it's natural when such great tragedy happens. I guess it was by New York Times, if I'm not mistaken, a really nice thing they noticed that basically we can put at par the situation that happened in Kherson and the Chernobyl tragedy, because a lot of people lost their homes. A lot of people were evacuated, even forcefully, because they thought that everything is going to be all right. I will just sit here and wait, and the water is rising, and sometimes we really needed to use our diplomatic skills to persuade some elderly people to evacuate from their houses because they were absolutely certain that the water would never came to their house, or that the water rising would stop eventually, like maybe in an hour or so. And we had to use our persuasion just to get them to safety. And the same happened largely at Chernobyl when a lot of elderly people saw no radiation, and so they were safe in their minds. They thought that nothing would ever happen to them. So yeah, and this is basically the biggest ecocide that happened in Europe since the Chernobyl tragedy. And I think we still have to process the damage done by Russian terroristic actual explosion of the dam because it has so many levels, like social one, economical one, uh, ecological one, and military one, of course. And we need not only my book, my book is just the first, one of the first attempts to deal with the memories of what happened, uh, written in English. And I think a lot of more books are to come.
And of course, there's an artistic price as well. And some people may say, well, hang on a second, lives are more important. Of course, lives are tremendously important and a terrible loss of both human and animal life. But also, there's an artistic cost as well, the most famous of which is the house of Paulina Rajka, the sort of folk artist, which is completely devastated by the flooding.
Yes, Bolino Raiko was actually, every region has some local heroes, or we should say local bollegends, maybe. And Bolino Raiko was definitely one of the Khersonian ones, Oleshki ones, because for those our viewers, our listeners who missed the story, Polina Raiko actually started painting when she was 60 plus years. And she has a lot of tragedies in her life that led her to it. Her husband died, her son was imprisoned, and just one day, out of the blue, she buys some stuff and starts painting her own walls. And like what emerges from that is something that you can never believe, like never in the world would believe were her first ever paintings in her whole life. Like she never painted before that. And you have some surrealistic animals. You have some parts of religious images because she was Christian. You have some images from Ukrainian history, and everything combines, everything interrupts. It's like it's maybe the house of Polina Riko was actually a museum and an art object itself in its complicity, in its in the way those images talk to each other, like absolute heaven. And I'm so pissed off by the fact that it was destroyed by the flood. Like maybe 10% of the images managed to survive, the ones that were as high as
The
possible on the wall.
ceiling, it's one's on the
Yes,
ceiling mainly, isn't it? And a
ceiling, yes,
few
and
just to the upper, yeah.
but the rest of it completely destroyed. And fortunately, it was, if I'm not mistaken, I guess it was 2020 year before the occupation happened, naturally, when one Ukrainian project managed to film a lot of those walls, a lot of those paintings. So at least we have some quality images. But it's absolutely different thing from witnessing it with your own eyes.
Yes.
And by the way, speaking of, if I may add, one interesting story I actually encountered when we, with my friends, with the team of the flood, were in Fedorivka village. It was a part of the territory that was flooded. And the story goes as this. A house was flooded to the ceiling, and when the water eventually went down, the owner, a lady in her late 70s, she entered the house, she saw everything in wrecks, like full wreckage, full chaos, and then in the corner, up to the ceiling, an icon absolutely untouched, absolutely unscraped. The icon, like it was hanging in the very place it used to be placed like for years before that. And when we heard the story, the friend of the lady came to us, like the neighbor, a woman who lives nearby, and she heard this part of the story, and like she goes for her smartphone. She tries to find something. She spends a lot of time doing so, and finally she finds it, and she shows us another picture, and that is her house. Actually, the same story: flooded, wreckage, and another icon that it was a Christ, if I'm not mistaken. The crucifix at the same place it used to be, untouched, unscathed. And we were fascinated. We were actually in some kind of, this feeling when you understand that you have just found the gem. You have just encountered like the story from the other side, the story from some thin world, if you may. And definitely it made, the story made its way to the book. And I have photos. I will share the photos with you, so you may maybe use it as a footage.
We can add them to the video, absolutely, and I'll put some images of Polina Raiko's house in there as well, so people can see the exquisite beauty, the light, the joy, the almost innocence and simplicity of that art, with the destruction that Russia brings with it, the darkness that they bring with them, the darkness, of course, they have inside and then project out onto the world, which we see in that destruction. And this is sort of interesting if we compare your two novels. You started in more of a sort of dark, sort of fantasy kind of genre, and The Flood is very, very different. There's extraordinary stories in there, but it's very much rooted in a kind of documentary fiction style. Is this part of, is it because you felt that's the right style to tell this story, or have you been shaped and changed by the war in terms of how you view this imaginary world?
Really great question, actually, because this is I'm trying to figure it out myself. Because my first novel, it actually just was re-released one more time. It kind of a best-selling piece of art I made. It is happening. The whole story is happening in Melitopol region, in Priazovia region near the Azov Sea, and basically in Ukrainian steppes. And what I tried to do there, as a young writer, as a young author, I wanted to picture the fear that is uncommon, because usually when we hear about some horror fiction, we imagine either a some Lovecraftian-esque style of elder gods, of some mansions forgotten and rediscovered, etc. Either that or something more close to Stephen King, a great friend of Ukraine, and his story of some small city with its own demons, with its own secrets. And I wanted to take a step away, maybe a step to the left, and show that fear can also work in the bright daylight. In the bright daylight, in the midst of the field, in the midst of the steppes, where there is nothing but you and this whole emptiness watching through you. And that was the very idea that I tried to build the Stepovy ball around. It's actually the first part of the trilogy, and the second book was planned to be way different than it will actually come out, because the war changed the landscape of my own writing, the landscape of the fiction I try to represent. And when we speak about the flood, at the very beginning of the book, like the first thing you see when you open it, is this with writing. This is a book of love. And that's what it is, actually. Yes, the flood is a book of like enormous love that I felt during my serving as a soldier in Khersonian region and during my expeditions as a volunteer, because people of Khersonian steppes, the land itself, like even through every, even after living through like absolute hell, having occupation, having the flood, having human safari as of now, we all know that Kherson region is a place where Russians basically hunt civilian people with drones just because they can, just for their amusement. Even having everything happening like that, people still have this inner light inside of them, you know? As David Lynch used to say, golden hearts, like everywhere around the place. And this light, this bright light was so captivating that I just emerged into it, you know? It was something that I let go through me, and the book is the result of this process happening. So I think me as the author is just a medium between what happened in the region and how it can be put into something so uh, basic, so limited as a single book. I tried to make the flood a portal to the land, and I really hope that everybody who will actually maybe once again, and I really hope that everybody who will be a reader, I hope, of this book will be able to feel this warm winds of Khersonian steppes, embracing them. This is my aim, actually.
Fantastic. No, it's very, very lyrical. In The Flood, you've chosen a really interesting character, not a journalist or someone who is sort of fairly typical to bear witness. You've chosen a clockmaker, an artisan, someone who perhaps is not as articulate, but is more able to absorb the stories of the people. What are the sort of themes you wanted to bring out there? I mean, obviously, time is one because he's repairing broken clocks. You know, healing is another. What are the key themes there, and that choice of protagonist?
Thing is that he's basically a clocksmith, a word that is not really used to depict a person who works with clocks, but as our protagonist describes himself, he says, I never made a single clock in my life. How can I call myself a clockmaker, a clockmaster, or a clock anything but the smith? I just repair things, you know? And the process of him trying to not only heal those things that are brought to him, but also to heal himself, to find his place in the chaos, is something that the society of Ukrainian South are going through. And I'm talking not only about the Kherson as the city itself, I'm talking about more large area, about soldiers, about people who decided to stay despite all the things that happened in the region. And so this clocksmith is maybe a part of the land that can be the closest to our reader. You can associate yourself with the guy who just arrived to the city, who knows close to nothing about it, who has some skills, and he can actually put those skills to good use. Uh, and he, as I guess a lot of our readers, he feels for this place. He wants to make things better. And the place dictates the way he can heal it, the way he can help it, the way he can, put some difference. There is a major plot twist. I don't want to spoil, it on the podcast, but a major plot twist that has something to do with a part of Kherson that was destroyed, and our protagonist is trying to restore it. And I really think that the symbolical restoration of the space is something we can extragolate to the whole region.
And I find time is interesting as well. And let's relate that back to the question I wanted to ask about Western media and why the events of Kakhovka, which to me were immediately shocking. Just, I mean, it's possible because at university I was part of an ecological group. So the sheer violence against nature really struck a chord. But also just the realization this is thousands of people's lives, their homes, their memories, and what there seemed to be in the Western media was near, I won't call it indifference, but just sort of it was hedged. You know, the story was hedged with Ukraine alleges, Russia alleges, etc., etc. The dam was described as collapsing, as if this is some, natural event and, maybe it just crumbled. Maybe. It's an absolute repetition of not just Russian propaganda, but the absolute nihilism and lack of morality, the lack of truth, the denial of reality itself that is inherent in Russian propaganda. And it was shocking to me that the media treated the story in this way. You've chosen a clockmaker, and the theme of time is also interesting because time has an indifference. It keeps ticking, whether we impose our morality on things or not, whether we take action or not. Is was that a conscious thing? Also, that time can have that sort of quality of indifference to human suffering as well.
Yes, absolutely. You know, here is the thing, like, as a true detective used to say, time is a flat circle, and everything we did will happen over and over and over again. And the thing is about Kakhovka Dam, about the whole tragedy, that it actually struck twice. And the first strike was when the whole thing was actually constructed, because there used to be a place known as Великий Луг, the Great Lug, and it used to feed the whole area. It was rich in animals, rich in nature. Actually, Cossacks back in the time, I mean, way back in the time, Cossacks used to hunt in this area, and they managed to provide themselves with enough food to not be dependent on, other countries, other regions. The whole place that was chosen to be a place where the Kakhovka Dam was actually built used to be some kind of, mm, rich and extremely important haven for all the people who lived there. Then Soviet Union decided that there is a problem with water supply to Crimea. And it really was, there was a problem, and there were different ways of solving that. And they chose actually the way of flooding the whole area and thus providing the fresh water to the south of Ukraine and to the northern Crimea. And a lot of people had to abandon their homes when that happened. There was no yes or no. You could just choose the place you would like to move to, because there was no, social. They didn't try to listen to people who lived in the place. They just said that the dam is going to be here, the water reservoir is going to flood your houses. So, like, sorry guys, now you live in some different area of Soviet region, of Soviet Union. And that is the first strike when the Great Lug turned into the water basement, and this holiday of nature, if I may call it this way, was completely gone. And then the very Russians who created this dam, who created this water reservoir, they blew it off trying to avoid. It is my opinion, but I think it is actually what happened there. They tried to avoid Ukrainian forces from besieging the left bank of Dnipro, from actually starting the de-occupation process there. And they blew the dam just to make Dnipro River uncrossable. For the moment, it actually happened. Like the whole thing, flooding, you cannot siege a bank of the river when the flood is ravishing and destroying everything inside. So this is, you know, a kind of Ouroboros, like a snake that bites its own its tail. They created it with a catastrophe and they destroyed it with a catastrophe. And a lot of things the flood is about also deal with time. By the way, I think we may talk about the sundial in the center of Kherson and a beautiful soul named John Howard, British. If I'm not mistaken, he was a British judiciary, and he is actually the guy who introduced the circumstantial judiciary to the British law. I may call it the wrong term, but what I mean is that he was the guy who told that you cannot judge the, say, wealth wealth man who steals something and a robbery by the man who has nothing to eat. You have to actually count those circumstances, their social status, you have to count with it. And being in his late 50s, if I'm not mistaken, or even 60s, he visited Kherson to study the way prisoners live there, because Kherson was a big city, a big naval center, and he was interested in the way Russian Empire that controlled Kherson at the time treats their prisoners, and especially treats their prisoners under naval law, because there were some different ways of prosecuting them. And it just happened so that there was a disease ravaging through the Kherson at the time. And John Howard, like, he was able to say, goodbye, guys, I'm leaving home. But he stayed. He stayed. He used a lot of his own money to create some safe harbors, to create some medical places for refugees. And he got sick himself and he died as a part of that disease spreading through Kherson. And there was like a really magical thing that he wanted. After his death, he asked, do not make a monument for me. I don't want any monuments. Just make a sundial in my memory. So even in death, I will help people. Even after my passing, I will show them time. And that's exactly what people did. And John Howard's sundial stands proud in the midst of Kherson, even now. Even through all the shavings, it survived. It is still untouched. So I really hope that one day you will be able to visit Kherson and see this dial yourself. But it's also a part of this time narrative, as you mentioned it. This is all about the city, the identity of this region, and sometimes even unexpected ways it can provide, some insights to you, to provide some local heroes' stories to you. And having a British judiciary as a local hero in Kherson, I think that's the thing that should be taught and should be spread widely.
And that's indeed something I'd not heard before. So that's a fantastic story. Of course, Donbass and industry in the Donbass, which Russia likes to claim, that also was founded. And many of those institutions and cities in Donbass were founded by amongst others, Welsh entrepreneurs, and many other Europeans. This is the extraordinary quality as well, isn't it? Not only do the waters obliterate so many lives and so many cultural objects, um, it is the purpose of Russian propaganda to then try to obliterate all memory of it. And if you have a memory of it, it's trying to convince you that that's a false memory, and that somehow it's not valid. How important is not just your book, but your role, I think, as a writer to sort of counter this sort of oblivion that Russian propaganda seeks to wield as a kind of geopolitical power?
There is a beautiful place in the center of Kherson that used to be a red house, but now it is Khersonian Art Museum. Khersonian, one of the biggest art museums. No, what used to be one of the biggest art museums in Kherson region. It was looted. It was looted, heavily looted by Russians. Reports were all over the media, and I was fortunate enough to get inside the place. It is closed for people right now, but we managed to use some diplomatical skills, so to say, and we got inside. And there is a grim irony that Russians left after the looting. They stole something close to 300 objects, but they left some. And do you know exactly what did they leave?
No, I don't. No, this is a new story for me.
They left a really huge head of Lenin. That is what they left. Like pictures stolen, other works of art stolen. The huge stone monument of communist war chief, as they call him, that's for you Ukrainians. That's for you to remember because he created Ukraine, as Russians seem to claim. And it is really grim irony in it, and also laziness because I think they were just too lazy to, get this huge monument with them. But all the jokes aside, the way they portray the stolen art right now is one of the best demonstrations, one of the best proofs of their crimes that they gladly provide themselves. And it is really funny because you do not have to do some extra job. They themselves publish articles about saved works of art, about how they rescued art from Khersonian Museum, from Melitopol Museum, and all the other places they occupied. And they are trying to write our painters, our artists, our sculptors into their own narrative of so-called Novorossiya. And they're trying to turn all the art they managed to loot so it would portray the unity of Ukrainian and Russian people. And this oblivion you talked about, like they basically uh, try to force Ukrainians into some kind of toxic relationships where you have to admire the great Russian culture and you have to uh, portray your own heritage, your own lineage, the whole history of Ukrainian art as a part of great Russian culture, as a way of small Ukrainian people, as they call us. You know that there is a term Malorosy that Russians use to portray Ukrainians, and Maloros is basically the small Russian. They view us as small Russians. What they do with the looted heritage, they just try to turn it the way so that the world would believe that we are willingly accepting the occupation and we always were some small minor brothers to them. And here is the proof. Here is all the pictures we looted in Kherson that prove our point. Like, absolute disaster, but for some reason they keep going. And there is an official score of objects looted. The score, the list is provided by the administration of this Khersonian Art Museum, and most of the proofs we get from Russian exhibitions. So somewhere in St. Petersburg, somewhere in Yalta. They are glad to provide us with evidence, so that's what they do. And returning to the question that you mentioned earlier about the way we as writers, as people of culture, try to withstand this pressure, I think the more Ukrainian authors, Ukrainian people of culture, let me say it this way, talk to our colleagues in Europe, throughout the whole world, but especially Europe, because I think Ukraine is a part of European cultural landscape. The more we talk, the more we share our stories with each other, the harder it would be for Russians to uh, spread their misinformation, to spread their fake news, and to prove their point of Ukrainian being nothing else but small Russians.
And I have to ask as well. So, I mean, the last sort of question here is, what are you going to be able to do? Because obviously, you have a lot of commitments, but what are you going to be able to do in order to try and sort of promote this book and promote this narrative amongst, English language audience? Are you going to be able to come and do events? Because I know that there are difficulties, obviously, for people to sort of travel. You have to get special dispensation. But this seems especially important right now, that it's Ukrainian voices and Ukrainian stories that are given priority, not that I have to say, Russian stories are given primacy at the moment. So what are you going to be able to do with the release of the book?
I would really like to be able to visit different places in Europe and make some, kind of discussions about the theme of the book and the Khersonian region in the whole and this tragedy as it happened. But the problem is that I am not the problem. The case is that I am Ukrainian soldier, and a lot of stuff to be done. Like I am on a really short vacation right now, and like in a few days coming back to work. And right now, my unit works in the opposite direction. I used to be on the south of Ukraine, Kherson. Right now, we're working on the north of Ukraine, Sumy region. And as you know from the news, a lot of stuff happening here. But what I would really love to do if there was a way to arrange something like that is actually having people who are Khersonian natives, people who can share their own stories about the region, who can actually put some deeper context for the book to speak out. And maybe they will be able to, visit some places in Europe that are unavailable for me, like just because I'm a little bit busy as of now with all the drones and stuff. And if the time is right and the place is right, I would really, really want to have some translations from English to French to German to Spanish, like all the main and not main, all the languages spoken in Europe. This is the for me as a translator, it's a magic as seeing your own book getting translated into a language you can't actually speak, and opening for new audiences, opening for new communities. So I'm really looking forward to The Flood being translated and sharing the story even further.
Well, we look forward to that and look forward to the opportunity to hear that, even if you're not able to come over to, say, sort of London and Europe at this point to promote it. Certainly, virtual events would be fantastic as well. I'm delighted you'll be able to make time, especially as you are, having some well-deserved very short rest in between going back and serving. Massively grateful that you'd spend the time with me and the audience to talk about your novel, and I hope it will inspire some people to go out and get themselves a copy.
Thank you. I'm really pleased we had such a warm conversation, and I really hope I can invite you to Khersonian steppes yourself when the situation gets quieter.
Yes, I that's definitely on my bucket list of things to do. Absolutely. Salve Ukraini.
Heroes well.